What is up, everybody, and welcome to the REIL Talks Podcast. My name is Mike Singletary.
And I am Frank Chen, and we are going to be your hosts. And what we're going to do is break down what it takes to live life on your terms through entrepreneurship, specifically real estate investing.
So we're going to hit it hard, the good, the bad, and the real, because that climb, as any entrepreneur knows, is never smooth. So let's get real. This is my friend David Olds. He's a full-time real estate investor based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. He started real estate investing back in 2002. Now he's a sought-after speaker and coach who has a thriving national wholesale company and continues to grow his rental portfolio while teaching the next generation of investors the tips and secrets that they need to rapidly grow their business and get to the level that they desire. In 2021, David launched Easy REI Closings. This is .com or LLC, easyreiclosing.com right now, which has quickly grown into the largest virtual transaction coordinating company in the nation, helping investors and wholesalers close their deals in all 50 states. So Easy's mission statement is to simply help investors do more deals and make more money. That's awesome. You know what I mean?
That's what we do every day.
Did I miss anything there?
Gosh, no, it always sounds better when somebody else reads it, I'll tell you. and then I start thinking, well, who is that guy, right? You know.
Well, you're a man of many hats, by the way. You know what I mean? You're a man that has a lot of talents. And I think a lot of it has to do with you've been in the game for a long time. But
yeah. I mean, I tell people I was just too stupid to quit, right? You know, so over the course of 20 years, you just do a lot of things. But yeah, 2 decades, man. It seems crazy to even say it out loud.
Dude, well, I mean, how I met you or how I knew of you were you're like the Dispo King.
Yeah.
Right. And you still are. You have some fabulous education out on Dispo. I purchased one for sure.
Yeah.
I gave it to my Dispo team, and that's really helped us quite a bit. And we'll put links below on your stuff. You know what I mean? But I mean, can we talk about Dispo a little bit? Because I think that's
sure, dude. I love talking about this. That's like my first love. And
I mean, we'll talk about transaction coordination, but Dispo
transactions are boring, man. They really are. Let's talk about sales and talking. You know, this is what we are, right? We're like talky people, right? This is we are the exact reason that you need a transactions coordinator, because we're terrible at that shit. And we don't want to do it, and nobody wants to talk about paperwork. Let's talk about sales. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think it's both important, right? I mean, obviously, right? But I think that most people make the mistake, and I know I did, and I did an episode on this where I think if I had to do it over again, I would have focused on Dispo first. And I think the majority of people focus on the front end, getting the contract first, and then deal with Dispo, right? So what are the top mistakes that you see people making when it comes to Dispo?
100%. They don't, you have the course. So, we start with, I think the second module is the first module is listening to my nonsense story. But the second module, the first real meat of the course is starting with the end in mind. Let's start with the end in mind. And it's so crucial after doing this for so many years and thousands of deals. If everybody in your company does not understand the purpose of what your company does, you're doomed to fail. And what is the purpose of what we do? It's not to have logoed shirts and hats and yellow sneakers or offices. We cash checks, man. At the end of the day, that's the goal. We need the title company to send us a check or wire us money. How do we do that, right? So let's work backwards. We sell deeply discounted properties to landlords, contractors, and investors. First thing. So everybody in your company better understand what the purpose of their job is. So if you're marketing, right, we need to understand, first off, who is our buyer? Like, who are we trying to target? So let's just say we're in, pick a city, I don't know, Providence, Rhode Island. Right? We're going to be in Providence, Rhode Island. That's going to be our market. Well, we better understand what buyers are buying in Providence, Rhode Island. And in our world today, that's very easy with data, right? We can pull data. We can pull a list of who has bought properties within the city or county or whatever it is for the last 60 days or last 90 days, or if you want to go out 6 months, who's bought properties for cash in what zip code. Then we could take that list and segment it down and see what are the most popular zip codes, what's the most popular, what's the median size range? What's the price range? Like all that data is available, but you better understand that before you start going out and spending a bunch of money on marketing, right? Because the way I look at it, my American Express, good Lord, it runs up pretty quick, right? But all those dollars are little soldiers. when I send them out to work, they better come back with 5 friends.
Right.
And we're not just spending money just because we can, because even American Express will put a limit on you. So everybody in the company needs to understand what the end goal is. So marketing better be marketing in an area where not only where there are buyers, right, but we need to know what those buyers want. So we have to put apples in the top of the funnel to get apples out the bottom. We put, grapefruit in the top and expect pineapples to come out. We're never going to win, right? Unless we just happen to get lucky. One falls in by mistake. So your marketing has got to be targeted. Your acquisitions people, even more importantly, they need to understand, okay, when I contract this property at 123 Main Street, how is a buyer going to make money here? If your goal with acquisitions is just to put it on a contract at 50 cents on the dollar, well, some will work, but a lot won't. But if your acquisitions teams can evaluate the property and understand, okay, this is a rental property with 6 months left on the lease, what is a buyer in this area willing to pay? Well, now we can work backwards and establish the right buy price. If it's a rehabber, right, we need to look at what similar properties have sold for. What was the cash price? Well, we need to be underneath that to establish our assignment fee. So that would be the biggest mistake I see in pretty much all across the board, generally stems from acquisitions.
So what you're saying is that start, just like you said, just to recap, start with the end in mind. You're targeting an area that that obviously is very active on the dispo side, right? On the cash sale dispo side. And then you're marketing that area, but you really have a clear understanding who that buyer is before you even start putting things under contract.
Yeah. And understand this, even no matter what, you can be very targeted with texting, cold calling, direct mail, right? Like you can target that down to a sub-zip code. If you're doing PPC, it gets a little hairier, right? But no matter how targeted you are, I can target one particular street and get this seller, but he may call me about a property that he has in Illinois.
Yeah.
Right? Some of that's going to happen, but we want to try to take as much of the guesswork out of the equation as we can.
I mean, that's interesting because that does happen quite a bit, right? So let's say we have a property that we got under contracts in Illinois and we're not familiar with that area. What does that first 2 weeks look like for your company? Now, so you don't need to give away all the special sauce.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'll give you as much as we can. Yeah. So our process, right? We have an acquisitions department, then we have an underwriting department. So our acquisitions person, their job is to get as much information as possible. They kick that over to underwriting, which is like a sales manager, somebody in your company that can put a second set of eyeballs on it if you're structured that way. But acquisitions needs to be able to look at properties similar to the, Mrs. Smith, hey, let me take a look at what similar properties to yours in your area have sold for. So, acquisitions should have an idea of what properties like this are selling for cash, right? For the most part, we're going to talk about wholesaling. I get there are novations and everything, but you don't want to do this all day. So, what are properties like that selling for cash? So some areas it may be 40 cents on the dollar. Some places it may be 72 cents on the dollar, right? So this is where you have to understand your market just a little bit. But let's just say you get a one-off deal. It's pretty easy to go into PropStream or CRS or Privy or one of those batch, right? One of the softwares and say, okay, here's what properties within a mile of this one have sold for cash. So at least we're not completely blindfolded when we're throwing the dart at the map, right? So, let's say we contracted from there. We feel like we're at the right price. We feel like we've gotten all of the information. And that's a spot where people usually make mistakes, right? Your acquisition people, because their acquisitions is so motivated to get the contract. That's all they want is they want the contract signed so they can get the next one. And, I've listened to thousands and thousands of calls over the years. And like somebody will say, we patched the roof. Hey, are there any leaks? No, we patched the roof. And they just blow right by that. Well, patch the roof like how? Did like an asteroid hit it? Did a squirrel burrow through? Like tell me, they don't stop to ask those types of questions. And here's an example of that. We did this house in Knoxville a couple of years back. And let me stop there again. I told you I have a story issue, right? Anyways.
Don't worry about it, man. Tell it.
So, I'll come back.
But we can always break it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's say the contract comes over to dispositions. The first thing we do is we find somebody to go take photos and video. Those photos come back to us. And here's where we'll pick up the story. So I've got these 2 monitors in my office. And I sit there in my chair and I sort of swivel back and forth between the 2 of them. And I'm reading the acquisitions notes. And I'm looking at the pictures of the house on the other monitor. And it says, the notes from the acquisition say, needs some drywall, AC ducting hanging in the living room. So I look over here and I'm looking at the pictures. Dude, there's not a stitch of drywall in this house. It's been gutted to the studs. And I can see AC ducting every place. So you see, the problem is we based our buy price off of a couple of pieces of drywall, which I don't even know what that means, right? Like, I don't know how anybody quantified that. And then I'm looking at what we've got. So, when that happens, the question is, I bring in the acquisitions person. I'm like, here's your notes. Here's the pictures. Is this what you thought you were buying? If the answer is yes, okay, I guess now we can talk about pricing, right? Yeah, you're fired. But if no, it's even worse. No, well, why not? Let's listen to the call. And did the seller just outright lie to us? Which it doesn't happen as often as you would think. It really doesn't.
Really? It happens to us all the time.
They just outright lie.
Okay. I digress. Not outright lie, but there's always something they omit.
Well, here's what I found. Again, another story. So I turned all of my properties over to a property manager. Maybe like 2 years ago. So I was in that transition period, and she called me and she's like, hey, can you run over to 4820 Howell Circle? So people can look it up. It's a house I own here in Chattanooga. I'm like, sure. So I jump in my car. And first, I hadn't been there in so long. I had to stop and think, shit, how do I get over to this house? So I get over there and I'm driving. Oh, and she had asked me, how does it look? I'm like, looks fine. But as I'm driving over, Michael, the thought went through my head, oh, I'm just exactly like a seller. I don't have any idea how this house looks. I haven't been in there in 5 years. I'm like, I guess it looks good. Luckily it did. But, I think there's just a lot of that where sellers don't know, they inherit it, they have tenants in there.
Yeah.
I think there's more of that than the outright lies. And even then I would say we just don't ask good questions. I think just poor questioning from acquisitions. So here's what we do. And we're probably going all over the map here, but here's what we do when we have a deal fail. So to me, we learn far more from a bad deal than a good deal, right? So what we'll do is we'll sit around the table every week or two. We'll say, okay, hey, we had to kill these 3 deals. Let's talk about it. So it's me, ops manager, marketing manager, dispo and acquisitions, and sales manager. Okay, let's start with dispositions. Why didn't this sell? Well, buyers are crybabies. They'll always tell you why your deal sucks. I say, okay, well, I get that. We sell distressed houses. This is not a surprise, right? So we take those items. Okay, were those things in the notes? Did we know that on the front side? Okay. Did dispositions? Did you call everybody? Like, we pulled a list of 300 cash buyers within 2 miles in the last 6 months. How many of those people did you get a hold of? Because in that list, there's a buyer. And we're trying to figure out why this didn't sell. All right. Well, I got a hold of 60% of them, 70% of them. Okay. Not perfect, but I get it. We can't right. We can't skip trace everybody. I mean, you can, but just skip tracing is what it is.
You're getting a hold of every single person is pretty tough.
Yeah. Right. It's tough. Right. But did we make a good effort? Did our VAs post? Did we, were we answering phone calls? What was your call time? All of those metrics. So, okay. So then we'll work backwards. Okay. Well, acquisitions. Did you know all the things that the feedback that we're getting? Are you aware of that? Well, yes or no. If no, why? Right? Was it something? And now here's an opportunity for training. Right? Was there a phone call? Like, what was the phone call? How did it go? Did you ask these questions? Okay, in the future, these are the things that you need to be watching for, because what you don't want as a business owner or a wholesale company, you don't want a lot of dead deals. One, deals cost us money, right? But beyond that, once you scale up and you have a team, like we have the little gong, right? Acquisitions gets a contract, gong, we put it on Instagram, everybody's excited. Dispo gets the deal, they're like, we're going to make 20 grand. And then you have these repetitive deals dying and dying and dying. And then just everybody gets discouraged, right? So you want to try to figure out why you're continuously having these problems. So, maybe acquisitions is like, yeah, I know it was a shithole and it's in the notes and it is what it is. And maybe dispositions is like, yeah, man, we pulled a list. There was 50 buyers within 10 miles over the last 2 years. Well, now we spin back to marketing and go, why are we in this area?
Yeah.
Where did this deal come from? And then, you know, maybe underwriting's like, hey, we knew it was in a rural area. We got it cheap. We took a shot at it. Okay, great. No problem. Like we're going to take a flyer every so often, right? But we try to work backwards and see where did our deal go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Where did we mess up, you know, so to say. So, and that's because we try not to screw up the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great lesson, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, what is your fallout ratio typically?
Man, we're probably about 40% nationwide, and the national average is about 50. So we're slightly better than everybody else. But when I was doing local wholesaling, we closed 90%. But that's a different business model, right? I'm standing in the house. I know the floors are crooked. You know, I mean, I could touch it, feel it, taste it, lick it. Like we're here. You know, and when you're doing that, you're literally in your brain doing your sell price and your buy price and, you know, making the offer based off what you see. But like you said, you know, virtual, you know, you're just dependent on what the seller tells you. And we've had so much wacky stuff pop up, man. We sold properties, the buyer's inspection comes back and he's like, hey, did you know the whole west wall of this house? It was a split level house. So the wall above the garage, do you know it's filled with honeybees? No, nobody told us that.
Dude, I guess one time we had a house. Go ahead, brother.
Go ahead. Yeah, I mean,
one time we had the back of the house not even there because
Really?
we couldn't even see that. We only saw the pictures of the front. We didn't realize the whole back wasn't even there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I get you on that. You know, I just want to kind of go back to this because I know how important it is, especially to beginners and stuff like that, because they don't really understand how to walk, how to have a systematic process on the disposition side. So you get it under contract, right? You pass it over to Dispo. Your acquisitions pass it over to Dispo, I'm assuming. Are you guys talking about it even before you put it under contract? Your acquisition and Dispo? Okay.
Great point. So a lot of what we do kind of stems from this very thing. So with wholesaling, right, we have contracts that have, you only have so much time, right? You're sort of like Cinderella at the ball. I always tell people you should hear the second you get a contract signed, like time's ticking, right? The sand through the hourglass. You either have 30, 60, 90 days, whatever you put on your contract. So when you're working virtual, let's say we have 60 days, we get our contract signed, that's day one. You know, it takes a day or two for the contract to get to dispositions by the time they fill out the CRM and do all of the different things. So, you know, a couple of days have passed, it gets over to Dispo, and now we've got to start getting pictures. Sometimes that's easy, right? Sometimes it takes 3 weeks, right? Someone's got COVID, someone's out of town. You know, like they're just these things that happen. So what we realized is, you know, so let's say it takes 2 weeks to get our photos so we can email this property out, and it's taking 3 weeks to get a deal closed in that particular state, because one thing we know about in our company is we do know what the closing time is by state. The fastest is about 7 days, but New York can take 7 weeks. It's just, you know, just a weird thing. So, so let's say 2 weeks to get pictures, 3 weeks to close. That's 5 weeks out of 8, like gone. So we have to move very quickly. So what happened, to kind of come back to your question there, is what we started doing was, the minute that we had a property under contract, while we were waiting for those pictures, we do what's called a pre-launch. For us, we're going into those local Facebook groups. You know, let's say the Providence, Rhode Island Landlord Association or whatever it is. And we're starting to just sort of talk about this property. Hey, we've got this property coming. And we don't give a price because we don't know what the condition really is. Because condition could be better, could be worse. You never know. We don't give an exact address because I don't want somebody over there trying to steal my deal. Yeah. We're like, hey, we've got this 3-bedroom, 1-bath coming up in Highland Park. If anybody's looking for a rental, you know, give us a call. So we're just kind of trying to chum the water just a little bit and see what the appetite is for that type of a deal in that area. So there is definitely conversation between the two. And where that really came from is, you know, when you start working virtual and you're popping in and out of markets all over the country, you know, some of these groups take a couple days to some admin to let you in, right? Where we can start doing our postings. So that's sort of where this whole pre-launch came from, is, hey, let's just try to get ahead of the game a little bit. You know, let's just grab a Google image, slap it up there. Let's just see what happens, right? And if I post that for 3 or 4 days and I get 100 people say, yeah, send me the details. Great. Maybe I was going to put 20 on this thing, but the pictures come back good. Maybe I jack it up to 35 for an assignment fee. Also, I put it up there and get 2 responses, and one of them is somebody trying to sell me skip tracing, right? I'll be like, maybe I'm going to put 8 on this one, right? Yeah. So I can just sort of clutch and break and judge the market just a little bit. So yeah, definitely lots of communication between acquisitions and Dispo.
That's a great tip, man. I mean, that's a fantastic tip, actually. I think most people don't do that, right? Yeah. They don't put feelers out. So, okay. So conversely, what do you see people? What do you see that they don't do? They omit. You know what I mean? That they should be doing. Would that be one of them? Obviously, is there anything else?
So you do this a long time. Again, you have a story for everything. So I come out of my office. I just hired some new Dispo agents, and 3 girls, Cassandra, Rachel, Taylor. And they were all great. So I come out of the office and like, hey, let's have a Dispo meeting. Let's see what's going on. So I talked to the first girl, and she's doing, I'm doing this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, okay, you haven't sold it yet? No, keep working. Okay, go to the next girl. She's like, well, I'm doing that, the other thing, the third thing, the fourth thing, and this. I'm like, have you sold it yet? No. Okay. Third girl, same thing. I'm like, girls, we should be doing 10 things here. You're all doing 6, and you're not even all doing the same freaking 6. We are all over the map. That's the mistake that I see from people. They're like, well, my last deal sold from a Facebook post, so I'm going to do a Facebook post, and I'm going to just post on Facebook for a week. Remember, 2 weeks gone, 3 weeks gone, 5 weeks. We only got 3 weeks to sell, right? So if I piss away a week or 2 weeks doing the wrong stuff, like you just run out of time. Like literally you turn into Cinderella, and the only way you can go longer is you have to get extensions. So that's a mistake I see from people. And that's why in Dispo team training, we're so focused on shock and awe, man. When we get a property, we launch that property, and our goal is to get it in front of every single person who could possibly be interested in buying an investment property, right? We will SMS blast it, email it out, RVMs, if you want to do RVMs. We've got BAs posting it in, all of the Facebook groups. We're putting it on Craigslist. We'll send out postcards. We are doing every possible thing we can because I want the phone in our dispositions department to absolutely melt. Yeah. I'm doing everything I can to drive inbound calls. Once we work through that barrage, if we haven't sold it, well, now we take that same list that we skip traced for cold calling and SMS and RVMs, and now we start making outbound calls. Like we attack dispositions. We're very aggressive about going out and finding a buyer because there's a buyer for everything. Just got to find.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. But okay, how about this? Because we've all been there. What happens if you don't get hardly anything? It's just crickets.
Yeah. So what we do is we only launch a property on Mondays and Wednesdays. We've talked about this a lot. And, the reason we do that is I don't want to send out a property on a Thursday night or a Friday morning. And then I start getting a bunch of responses on Saturday and Sunday because no matter what my team tells me, I know they're at the beach or on the boat drinking, and they are not answering those phones. They just, I'm realistic enough to know that.
Yeah.
So I want to send it out early enough in the week that, we have time to get it moved. But also we give it one solid week. And this comes from my days of being in retail. We try to make our first price our best price. But if we launched it on a Monday, and we'll sit down and talk about lunchtime on on Friday. Hey, Olivia, what's going on with 123 Main Street? Well, I'm not getting anything, or people say this particular street is bad, or whatever it is, right? Like we're in it now. Like we got to find a way to monetize this thing. So, our team, they're experienced enough to know that, if people start shooting them really low, well, what, Michael, what would be your best number? What number would make sense to you, right? Mm-hmm. So we train them for that, because we want to try to get a number out of everybody. So we've actually got a whiteboard, and they will, underneath each property, Michael, Tom, Steve, Joe, Penelope, whatever. These are the offers that we're getting. So, if we look at that board and all the offers are low, then, all of them are low, like 10 people are within $2,000, then that's probably the number.
Yeah.
Right. If there's just nothing, usually there's not ever nothing. Like usually there's something, unless you're just in someplace super rural and you knew you were taking a little bit of a flyer. But, probably that next step is we'd send it out again the second week at a lower price to try to get the right number out there.
Would you say price reduction, or would you?
Never price reduction.
All right.
And here's why, because all of those things that you did for marketing, whether it was text, email, RVM, Facebook posts, they all exist at a moment in time.
Right.
And I may have sent you a text like, dude, let me see what my current, I do this every so often. My current thing, I have 16,973 unread emails.
Dude,
this is why I'm hiring an executive assistant, right? But so just because you sent me an email, I may be the right buyer. I just didn't open it because I'm fucking busy, right?
Right.
You may have RVM me and I didn't listen. You may have put it on Facebook and I just wasn't there. So the reason that I almost never will do a price reduction is I don't want people to think, oh, what's wrong with this deal? Why didn't anybody else buy it? Now it's got a little bit of the funk on it, man.
Yeah,
right?
leverage.
Yeah, so you lose that because now if I was a buyer, and this used to happen, he's a pretty big name. He sold his company, but there was a company here in town and they would send it out super high. And then they would like every 3 days do these big reductions. And I called him like, Bill, what are you doing, man? Like, I know, like I can track your deals. I know how long you got. And I just watch it to keep going down and down and down and down. Like I'm never going to buy off your first email because if you do that, you're training your buyers. You're training them that your first price is stupid high. And yeah, maybe they get lucky 1 out of 20 deals, but that's not worth it, right? Mm-hmm. Because how many deals are you selling at $3,000 instead of 10? So yeah, I am not a fan of price reduced. We'll go in there, we'll change the subject line, different emojis, whatever it is, maybe change the front picture, and it just looks like a new deal, just going back out again.
Yeah. That's fantastic, dude. I think you touched upon it a little bit. How about those rural properties, man? You know what I mean? I mean, I hate them too, but it's like you get them and you're like, I know there's a deal because I got it so darn cheap. Yeah. There's got to be a buyer. I mean, we're calling the realtors. Is there anything else that you would, you know what I mean, that you would do?
Yeah, there's that stuff you know, once you get past those top 10 things, like you can call property managers, you can call realtors, you know, but property managers to me are better than realtors because, you know, most realtors don't love us to start with.
They hate us.
But they do, man, they do. I was interviewing a new transaction coordinator today and she solely worked for realtors in Minnesota. So we were talking about that. But, you know, I talk about this deal all the time, Anderson, Alabama. Our team brought, it was back when I had a partner running acquisitions for us. And this great deal, cute little house. It was gutted on the inside. And we got it for like $14,000 or some ridiculous number. Had like a Zestimate of 120. So like by every metric, this is a winner, right? Well, look up Anderson, Alabama. I think it's like 269 people in the town. And it's like 70 miles from Huntsville. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a place where people stop to get gas, right? So we've got this deal and we're emailing it out. But like, dude, there's 269 people in town. Who are we going to talk to? The other 268? Like nobody's going to buy this thing. And it's been empty for 10 years and everybody has driven by this house and knows who the owner is. Like if it was going to sell, it would have sold. So yeah, it becomes, yes, there's a buyer for everything. There 100% is, but is it worth the time and energy to move that deal? Right. So, you know, I ask Siri in my office all the time, Siri, I'm going to say it, Siri, what's the population of Anderson, Alabama? Right. And if I get some number that's like super low and that little town isn't adjacent to a big town, we're not doing that deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because again, I don't want my dispositions team to constantly be feeling like they're just dragging a bag of rocks up the hill.
Yeah.
Right. Because even your best dispo people, you will wear them out. Right.
Yeah,
if I tell them they've got to make 500 calls a week and have, 8 hours of talk time and they've got to send so many texts, but they know the deal's a dog from the start.
Yeah.
Man, you do that for a couple of weeks, you burn me out. And I feel like I'm the best guy. Like you just wear people out and they won't want to work for you. So, is it worth doing that to your team?
I agree with you 100%. I don't deal with really small, skinny deals that takes a lot of effort because quite honestly, they take them out as much effort as the bigger deals anyways, right? And in the small towns, we omit it, but I always have this like nagging things like, did I leave something on the table?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we all have that a little bit,
sure.
But
maybe, maybe like a flat fee listing. I haven't had great luck with those. My friend, Tony Montalbano, who, he does a great job. He has a great luck with them. I've had terrible luck with them because they've blown up some of my deals, but maybe that would be an option.
Yeah, we do that because we've transitioned to land and
Yeah.
we just do all land now. So we do that quite a bit with
Yeah.
land. And it's a different disposition process, but it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
We have a couple of segments in this cast that we like to kind of go over. So like a humble brag, something that you're working on that you're proud of, that, you know what I mean? That what is it that's going on in David O's life right now? You're like, man, I'm the shit.
Well, our transaction company is pretty good, man. We're really good at what we do. We're probably about 10 days away from signing a deal for a nationwide title company.
Nice.
That's pretty cool. So
okay.
Within our transactions company, our whole goal with that is to, reduce time and compress time from the time our client gets something under contract to the time it closes. And we're really good at that. But by having our own in-house nationwide title company, our goal is to compress that even further and get people paid faster. So that's pretty cool.
Sweet. I know that because we just moved into Florida, and I know that we talked about, or we kind of touched base on Facebook. So I'm going to use you guys for Florida now.
Yeah, man. We'll crush it.
Absolutely. So also another big thing about us is we talk about, how it is in real estate, the life of an entrepreneur. It's a lot of downs. And
dude, it's Instagram says it's awesome, dude. It's all Rolexes and
Lambos and
ups. Hot chicks on yachts.
Yeah, right, exactly. But the shit storms is where we really cut our teeth, right? Yeah. Kind of give me something that happened to you that stands out. That was like,
pick a story, man. 20 years ago.
And I mean, give me the first one that popped to your mind, and what did you learn from that?
So in the early days, we bought this house. Honestly, so many lessons come out of this house. It was a subject to here in town. It's funny. I talked to Pace Morby when we were in Phoenix not that long ago, and he was talking about like deals never get called due. I'm like, bro, I've had 5 called due. He's like, I've never heard of 5. I'm like, dude, it just happened, man. I mean, maybe if I'd have been smarter back in the day, I could have saved it, but. I've had 5 called due, all for weird various reasons. But anyways, this house we bought sub 2. We had tenants in there. And this is the example I give all the time when like I'm in Dubai and people are like, oh, you're living this great life. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. But you're seeing the good days, not those bad days. When I was in the basement of this house in about 20 inches of sewage water in black rubber boots with a sump pumping out straight raw sewage out into the yard, and my wife's out there with a hose trying to hose it down, and we're like getting bags of lime and trying to cover it all. Oh, like that's a bad day, man. Like by any stretch of the imagination, that's a terrible day. Like literally came down these old rickety wooden steps. And have you ever been in a basement that's full of water? You don't know how deep it is.
No, I never have.
It's gross. You got to take one, and literally toilet paper and feces just floating on top.
Oh God.
So, the tenant called us over there, and I kind of looked in the basement. I'm like, oh my God. And I was broke at the time. We didn't have a lot of money. So we had to do shit. We had to do shit ourselves.
Deal with it.
Yeah. So we're like, I don't know, man. My brother, I'm like, well, let's go to Harbor Freight and get the 1.5 inch, sump pump line. I don't know. And we're down there literally like just with a string, dropping it into the water to pump it out the window. And yeah, that's the stuff people don't ever see, the stuff that's on the road to success. Yeah. And, I think being an entrepreneur is 80% of the time getting kicked in the teeth.
Yeah.
And 20% awesome. So people are like, well, why is it worth it to get kicked in the teeth or in the nuts 80% of the time? Because dude, the 20% where it's awesome is the best life you'll ever live.
That's 100%, bro.
It just is, man. We're doing this. Like we could be out digging ditches, and what day is it? It's Wednesday. I don't even know what day it is. It's Wednesday, and we're hanging out here just bullshitting about real estate. Because when it's good and you've put in the hours and the time, God, it's so good. That's why I tell people just don't quit. Like, dude, I was at an event in Houston this past weekend, and we're talking to these young kids, and I love young wholesalers because I started.
Was it Tim's event?
No, it was Tim's event, and then Hambright's event, and this was Ray Navarez and Ashaya Prito. They did Space City Summit. Really great one-day event. We were sponsors for it. But anyways, we were at this house party after with Nick Perry and all them. And anyways, I get a lot of young wholesalers there, and I do enjoy talking to them. And that's why I tell them, man, just do not quit. Like, look around this room. There are plenty of people who have made it work. Half of them are banana heads. They're not that smart. They just do one thing and they continue to do it over and over and over again until they make it perfect. Just don't quit, man. Life will be so good. I promise you, it's worth the bad days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? If you had to go back, and I know that a lot of people say, I don't want to change anything, all that stuff.
Oh, dude, I lay in bed fantasizing about going back.
I think it's bullshit. I was a knucklehead, right? If I could go back in time and change some things, I would definitely change a couple of things. But with that being said, for you, what would be the one or two things that you're like, man, I probably would change that?
Well, I mean, if you talk to anybody who's been wholesaling over 10 years, I'm pretty sure the answer is always, I would have kept more properties. I think that's a pretty universal. Dude, I had over 100 rental properties at one time. We've sold a few off over the years, but golly, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, we sold these properties for $20,000 to make $5,000 that are now worth 180. I mean, granted,
you probably needed it at that time. I mean, in all fairness, right?
Who knew?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's not true. I should have known, because when I was coaching 15 years ago, I remember being in San Jose, California, up near San Francisco. And I took my coaching client took me to a local REIA. And I remember this old guy sitting on a stool, older than me. Now I'm that old guy in those rooms, but him saying, somebody was trying to quiz him and trip him up. Well, what about a property with no equity? He's like, I don't care about equity. I just want it to cash flow, because I know over time the tenant is going to pay that mortgage down. I'm going to get the tax benefits, and that cash flow is just going to grow. So I guess we did know, but back then when we started really full-time wholesaling in 2009, I tell people, if this is broke, we were half a broke. We weren't even good enough to be called broke. we were eating ramen noodles and handwriting bandit signs, and we were handwriting postcards. That's how poor we were, dude. Like, my wife mastered getting like heavy duty card stock, awesome. And handwriting postcards, photocopying them, and then using an old paper cutter to cut.
Do what it takes, man. Right.
So, and it's funny because there are 3 or 4 of us that started all about the same time. We always lament the same thing. Like, I guess we'd kept more properties, but dude, we were young and broke, man. Making $3,000 to $5,000 was the greatest thing ever, So, do I wish we'd have kept more? Of course, right? I have this fantasy that I lay in bed and I'm like, how far back in time would I want to go with what I know now? And I've landed on, this is how much I've thought about this. I've landed on the second half of my junior year in high school. And I'm like, because that's where I feel like I was like smart enough. Like, no, I've dialed this in. I've spent a lot of time staring at the ceiling. So I'm like, okay, I was still relatively smart. But if I could just go back and know what I know now, but then I start falling into this rabbit hole of, well, how am I going to comp properties? Because there was no computers back then. Yeah. And I guess I could put out bandit signs and I could definitely talk to people, but how am I going to find buyers? And so I get into this whole rabbit hole of stupidness of, if I could go back in time, what would I do? But
I would have kept more properties.
I would have kept more properties. At the end of the day, I would have bought, because I'm really good. All of my portfolio is all owner finance. So I'd have just bought more properties.
I got you. Well, let's talk about, let's wrap this up by talking about your project. I know you kind of touched on it a little bit right now. Yeah. So easy REI closings.
Yeah.
Right? How did that come about? What is it about? Right. Yeah. And why should people use you?
Yeah. So what we do, as we said, we're the nation's largest virtual transaction coordination company. Yeah. And so, kind of anything I think comes from like a bunch of different little ideas or seeds that kind of get planted. One of them was we were working nationwide, and in fact, this office that I'm standing in, this podcast room, was originally our transaction coordinator's office. We had 3 people in here, and the first thing was we were doing a lot of JV deals. Nationwide property liquidity. We did a ton. So if you've done JV deals, people will come for 2 or 3 deals and then they'll bounce, right? They figure out, I don't want to split half my deal, which is cool. Like, I think you should do your own deal too. But in the meantime, I'm happy to help you. But we had a couple people that like hung with us for like years. I had this one guy, Mario. He was weirdly from Alaska, and he was wholesaling or getting deals in Macon, Georgia. Weirdest thing. But anyways, so one day I got on the phone with Mario. He called, like the girl, Taylor, wasn't here. And I said, okay, Mario, cool. You got another deal. Awesome. He's like, yeah, you sold that last one. We did good. I said, well, man, let me ask you a question if it's okay. Sure. dude, most people only do a couple deals with us. Why do you keep coming back? And he said, well, you sell my deals really fast. I'm like, thank you, man. I appreciate that. He said, but also, because he had broken English, he's like, I don't have to deal with the title company. I go, oh, okay, cool. But we kept hearing that. That was a common thing. And then, I had some people, some friends of mine that are like, hey, my TC quit. Can you just help me with a couple of these? Well, sure, we can do that. Then the next thing is right before COVID happened, we did the smartest thing ever. We went from a 1,200 square foot office and we leased 6,600 square foot. So smart.
Yeah.
And because we were scaling up. And the way this office is, there's sort of like, I'm pointing to it like you can see it. There's a huge, like half of the office is open and that's all of our sales team. We have a large conference room, but then in the front, there's this really large office, maybe 60 by 30. And so we had this office. I'm like, well, my partner at the time, like, well, what the heck are we going to do? We don't need all this space, but we got such a great deal on it. $6 a square foot remodeled. I'm like, well, what should we do? We're like, you know what? Because this is before COVID. I've heard of those WeWork spaces and shared office spaces. Let's just buy a bunch of desks and we'll rent desks out and we'll help offset the rent because we don't really need the space. So I spent like $9,000 on desks and chairs, conference table, a refrigerator, like this whole thing. And then COVID hit. So we never really rented that space out. So, so we started going nationwide. I don't know what finally triggered in my brain. Oh, well, what it was we were in COVID and we realized that everything went virtual really fast. Remember title companies like, dude, they would come out to your car. They didn't even want you to go inside. Like, here's a clipboard, sign this, and we'll take it in. So, so I think kind of all those things came together. I'm like, we could do virtual TC work all over the country because now it's all remote. So we can do, and we've got this office that God knows has a ton of nice desks and chairs in it. And that's sort of how it came about. And I mean, it's pretty similar to what we originally envisioned. The original idea was we'll have, because we had our own coordinators that we could certainly seed the company with. And I said, well, we'll find one of these nationwide title companies and we'll just work with them. Easiest thing ever. It's going to be so great. And so I got a bunch of my friends, Carlos, Ricardo, Carlos, Geary, Perry, all these guys. I'm like, hey guys, I'm thinking about opening this company. Let me do your deals for 90 days for free. And let me stress test this thing and see if it actually works. So we did that and it worked. And that's when we rolled it out to the whole country. We realized that the nationwide title companies didn't work. And now a bunch of them are starting to close down, like Blueprint just stopped taking investor business. And the reason is, when we looked at it, the reason these companies were started was not for us, right? They were started to do refis, foreclosures, that type of stuff, right? So what's different about that in our business, the reason that they struggle with investors is one, because we're a bunch of goofballs. We have crazy deals. But, we're on the speed plan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you refied anything during all of those low rates, but I had a house built 18 months before, literally 18 months before. They're like, hey, do you want to refi for 2.3%? I'm like, absolutely, man.
Yes, the answer is yes.
5 months, dude. 5 months. I'm like, it was fucking dirt 24 months ago. What is taking so long, man? Because they have no sense of urgency.
Yeah.
So what we realized is, we couldn't depend on them. Because we're sending them even back then 40, 50 files a week, and we just broke them. They weren't able to handle that kind of volume. So currently we use almost 180 title companies nationwide, and we have different title companies in every state depending upon what the transaction type is, because not every title company will do everything, right? Yeah. Some people will wholesale, but they won't do novations, but they won't do sub 2, but they won't do a sub 2 assignment. They won't do a wrap. You know what I mean? So you have to have somebody in every single state that will do all those transactions for customers. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
So, I mean, that's cool. So not only are you providing the transaction coordination piece, but you're linking them up to the appropriate title company that could execute.
We're doing all of it for them.
Yeah,
literally for us.
Cool, man.
If somebody's a client for us, they go online, they upload their contract, done. That's it. Go get your next deal. We're going to reach out to Mrs. Smith, the seller, and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, This is David. I'm working with Michael on this 123 Main Street. Hey, I'm going to be your point of contact from here all the way till closing. Yeah. In the meantime, I need to start to collect some information. Looks like you're on title with Mr. Smith, and he's passed away. Very sorry to hear that, but I need to collect his death certificate. Can I get a copy of the obituary? Please draw me a family tree of who the heirs are so we can figure out who needs to be contacted. Or, it's bankruptcy, or you have bad tenants, or foreclosure, whatever it is. Like, our team understands we did $69 million in closings last year. So we've seen every type of transaction there is. We just need like that keyword, dead person. Great. Yeah. Okay. This list. Oh, probate, this list, whatever it is. So our goal is the minute you upload that contract, we're going to work.
So are you taking over a lot of that stuff for how much is it a collaboration that we are going to need the investor or to do some of the work, and then we do some of the work?
I need a good phone number and a contract.
That's awesome, man. I can't beat that.
People, right? We'll change your life because you're going to get 30% or 40% of your time back. 30% if you're good, 40% if you hate it, which I hate it, right? And here's what we understand. You and me, I'm the client, right? Yeah. In this business, I'm the client, right? And I'm a banana head. All I want to do is be talking, as you can see, right? I want to be out I'm a wholesaler. I want to be talking to sellers, talking to buyers, making deals. The last thing I want to do is go sit at my desk and go, oh, I need to call and get a social security number.
Yeah.
I need to call and figure out what the rent is. Oh, I need to call and find out who two disinterested non-related parties are that I can talk into getting an affidavit signed so that I don't have to put this thing to probate. Like, we don't want to do that.
Yeah. And that is an important piece, because just to your point earlier, we got to cash the check.
It's the part that gets the check in your bank. Yeah. It's not the part that generates revenue, which is an interesting distinction. So I understand very clearly what my personality type is, but our transaction coordinators, they love what they do.
Yeah.
They detest, like, if I go over there on an Instagram live, dude, they're like turtles. They're like under the desk. They don't want to be on camera. They fucking hate all of that shit.
Yeah.
They just want to be gathering documents
on the eyes, right?
Yeah. So we realized it was really important to make sure we had the right types of people doing that stuff. But man, they love it. I've gone over there once. I'm like, hey, I'm going to this mastermind. I got to do a presentation. Can somebody do a graph for me? Like 12 hands go up. Like, I can do that. I'm like, you can? Like colors in Excel?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know how I do know the word pivot table. I don't know what it means, but that's like the extent of my Excel knowledge, right? But over there, they're like, these are those people. These are the people that love that stuff. So, so just different personality types. And, they really love to do that stuff. And, they're actually paid and incentivized to get your deal closed. When you get paid, they get a little commission too. So awesome. They work really hard at pushing your deals through just as fast as they can.
All right. Well, awesome, brother. Well, how can they find not only that business? You want to go ahead and give your information and the business information?
Yeah, you can, our company is really easy, and hopefully you'll have a link that you can.
I'll have all the links on the bottom.
Yeah. Well, we'll just do that. Just click the link that's underneath here. And what that'll do is that'll probably jump to a little video of you and me. And then there'll be a little button there that says, book a call with our team. And, in that call, we'll go over what your closing process is and kind of give you a little evaluation and see if we can help you, do more deals and make more money this year.
Awesome, man. David, hey, appreciate you, man. Drop some nuggets here, as I knew you would. Hey, that's a wrap for everybody. Until next week. Peace out.
See ya.
So that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you received value from this episode. If so, please share this podcast with your friends so we can help more people just like you. Also, hook up with us on Facebook, IG, and YouTube at REIL Talks. That's REIL Talks. So until next time, keep it cool and keep it real.